Thank you, Kelly. I'm here to talk to you today about something called EMV, otherwise known as chip and pin technology. The credit card industry is making changes that are going to affect virtually anybody out there who processes credit cards. And it's going to happen relatively quick. The first phase of this is going to happen in the next year to 15 months, and then the second phase by 2017. So we'll talk a little bit about this. But it's going to impact anybody who does credit card processing, but it also impacts anybody who would like to do couponing and loyalty programs. So we'll talk a little bit about this. But this gives us a unique opportunity to go into our customers, along with our partner Vantiv, and talk about some of these emerging changes and let them know what's going on and really help position not only Sprint, but many of our other partners with new technologies that they can take advantage of and really become a mobilely enabled enterprise. So let's talk a little bit about what's happening. First of all, there's 1.5 billion credit cards in the US, and the average number of credit cards per person is 3.5, but it's really more like 5 or 6 when you consider loyalty cards, healthcare cards, coffee shop cards, so on and so forth. And only about 30% of the people in the US don't carry a credit card at all. Now, here's what really prompted this. The rest of the world started doing this chip and pin technology some time ago. But as a result of that, because it was so effective in fraud, it really pushed fraud up in this country. So prior to the last few years here, credit card fraud ran about 3 to 4%, and the credit card brands, American Express, Visa, they were all okay with that low of a fraud rate. They felt like it was an immaterial amount of loss. But now with what's going on in the rest of the world, it's actually pushed fraud up in the United States. In 2012, it went up 14.6% from 2011, and in 2013, last year, it went up an astounding 29.1% from 2012. And now we, the U.S., now account for over 50% of the world's fraud. You can't simply absorb that anymore. So EMV is going to require all merchant terminals to be replaced by October 2015. Now that does not include gasoline and fuel shops. They have until 2017. So there's 8 million merchant terminals in the U.S., and the replacement cost of that is going to be about $3 billion. So there's a huge cost to the individual brands out there and the individual businesses out there. But not only that, the cost of credit cards, as I said, there's 1.5 billion credit cards out there. It costs about $1 each for those credit cards to be issued. That's going to jump up to $3 to $4 each because of the chip and pin technology that it has to absorb. So who is EMV and what is EMV Co? EMV is Europay, MasterCard, Visa, and they were the ones that originally took a look at what France was doing with chip and pin and said, you know what, this is a great way to complement PCI by having trusted devices that talk to each other and know that these devices are who they say they are and who they say they belong to. So they came up with EMV Co, which now includes Amex, Discover, JCB, Europay, all of these different brands, and they've developed these ISO standards and technical specs, not only for the card readers, but for the cards themselves. And not only that, it also handles the transactions. We'll talk about what makes the transactions so unique. So when I talk about a smart card, I'm also talking about devices, and that's what's in it for Sprint, is that our smartphones can do exactly what these smart cards do with the NFC chips that are in them. They've got universal circuit chips in there that can act as a credit card. It can act as a door badge. It can act as a lot of things. And that's really where this thing is going, is that we're going to see a lot of this functionality, e-purses and things like that, built into our devices. And people will start using their devices more for some of these things like credit card payment, smart card for e-purse and things like that. So there's about 3.5 billion smart cards out there already in the world, very few of them in the United States. But you really have to start with the smart card reader, because if you don't have a smart card reader, the smart card itself doesn't do a lot of good. So where are we in the world with that? So Europe is about 99% implementation on these new readers. Africa is about 84%. Asia Pac is about 77%. And Canada and South America are about 85%. The United States is at an astounding 0%. So that's one of the reasons that fraud's been pushed over into our country so much, because it's been so effective in these other areas that it's pushed fraud into what they call cross-border fraud. So the benefits are obviously that you're going to reduce fraud, and we've seen that already in the countries that have implemented this technology, and it's so effective that it's really pushed the fraud here more because they can't do it there anymore. It eliminates what's called card cloning, because when these cards are issued with the smart chips at the time of issuance to the individual, there are shared secrets between the brand and the person that is receiving the card that's encrypted on that card, so it can't be read like it can from a mag strip. It eliminates skimming. Skimming is, and I'm sure you've heard of this, where you go into a gas station, you pay for your gas, somebody records that transaction and then turns around and replays that to the brand and going to a different bank account, and they skim that card, that information, and they just basically re-record it and play it back. So it eliminates that too, because what happens is each one of these cards, not only does the card and the reader verify and validate each other and has that trust, but each and every transaction will have a unique being, if you will. There's no way, no two transactions can be alike. And if a brand's computer system were to detect a reused transaction, it would just simply reject it. So that's the way it's going to work. So it doesn't only have impact on credit cards. It also on healthcare. These smart devices can be used for credit card. For instance, in France, System Vital, there's about 8 million providers, physicians, nurses that have cards, and about 40 million patients that have cards. So you can see where it would be effective in reducing fraud there. In the government, you can use your device, your smart card or your device as an entry for computer systems, for buildings, and authenticate. Not only does it authenticate you, but it also authorizes you for certain things. Around the world, we're starting to see smart devices used in passports. Again, you can't clone a device with a smart card in it. And then smart driver's licenses in India. So you can see that there's a whole array of things that happen, and this is what your customer needs to understand. For instance, in M2M perspective, you're going to see vending machines that have devices in them that will not only decrement an e-purse on a smart card or a smart device, but it'll take inventory, it'll take non-cash transactions that then are paid back by the bank, so on and so forth. You'll see logical entry. You can use these smart devices. You can get a temporary one-time PIN and log into computers. You can use it for your door card. You can use it as a cradle in your car. That becomes your brains for your car, if you will. It becomes your phone. It becomes your stereo, your CD player, whatever. You can see you can use it in parking meters and buses. And in Britain right now, buses accept payment by not only smart cards, but smart devices. And so what happens is data starts to get captured, and it's good for couponing, loyalty programming, and following where people are from a presence perspective as well. So lots of implications here. It's going to change the whole way people do commerce, and your customers need to understand that going forward, because you got some pretty darn smart customers out there, and I'm sure they'll figure out ways that they can make money doing some of this. So where are we with this? As I said, by October 2015, there's going to be a merchant fraud liability shift. And what that means is that the brands themselves, if you haven't put in these new chip and PIN card readers, the brands are not going to be responsible for any fraud. The individual merchant would be responsible for that fraud. Similarly, 2017 for gasoline retailers, it'll be the same thing. If they haven't got that in by October 2017, they're responsible for that fraud as well. So that's kind of where we're at with the timeline. So that's really all I've got to say about EMV. I'll be glad to answer any questions you have. I can be reached at jim.berkowitz@sprint.com or at 615-400-4864. Always available to answer questions, always available to talk to your customers or anybody else. If you'd like me to talk to your branches about what's going on, I'd be glad to do that. Anyhow, back to you, Kelly, and thanks for the opportunity to talk.